Hello and welcome to this week's book in 5 minutes. My name's Lindsay Milner of silverandtraining.com. This week's book is called Humankind and it is written by Rutger Bregman. Now, I did review something else of Bregman's a couple of months or so ago, Utopia for Realists. So Bregman is a little bit of an idealist, and I quite like that. And I think, the times that we're living in at the moment, we're not long come out of the sort of height of the Black Lives Matter protests. Politically, the UK is in what I think is a terrible mess. The US, even worse probably, although not much. I think the UK is doing its best to level up to Trump levels of, outrageousness, incompetence, whatever word you want to choose. Those are my political views, and that's how I feel about things that are happening at the moment. So it was really good to read something about how inherently good Bregman thinks that human nature is. Now, this might be a counterintuitive view. In fact, it probably is very counterintuitive. We're taught, especially in Western societies, that people are inherently greedy, they're selfish, they're out for what they can get. And Bregman argues that actually we've learned this behaviour, we've learned this interpretation of human nature, but actually if we strip it down to how people behave, certainly in more primitive societies, in hunter-gatherer societies, how do people behave during times of disaster? People inherently want to collaborate and not compete with each other, and they do want to support each other and help each other out. Bregman produces quite a lot of stories, which makes it an interesting read. Scientific evidence. He has a different perspective on a lot of the scientific research. There's research quoted that shows how selfish people are, but he dissects that a little and looks at, there are a couple of really sort of well-known ones about how people behave in response to authority, and how people behave, the bystander effect. If people think that somebody else is going to deal with a problem, they won't bother. But he analyses a couple of these really well-known cases and looks at the reality of the situation, which shows that actually what we've been presented with is only one interpretation of what happened, and it doesn't take account of a lot of other information that doesn't fit the narrative that people want to put forward, that humans are basically selfish, greedy, good for nothing, lazy, don't care about anybody else. So he produces quite a lot of information that counters our current perception. He also looks at, well, if that's the case, why are our political masters so greedy, selfish, in it for themselves? Why are we not more socialist or communist? And he interrogates those things as well. And what he puts forward is that it's actually power that does corrupt. He looks at Machiavelli, he looks at what happens if people behave in Machiavellian ways in perhaps new societies first getting together, or hunter-gatherer societies, and anybody who was greedy and out for themselves would actually be chucked out, they'd be ostracised. In a college dorm, they have no friends, nobody wants to be around them. In hunter-gatherer societies, they were risking their lives, because if they tried to grab everything for themselves, they'd probably be thrown out of the group and left to fend for themselves, and probably most likely not be able to, and starve to death. So he produces a lot of, as I say, stories which make it an interesting read. Evidence that he interprets in a different way. One of the things that he looks at is the contrast between The Lord of the Flies, that novel that he says was written by somebody who had a very poor view of people. against what happened in a real life case that came to light of some South Sea Island young boys who did actually get stranded on a desert island and lived there for years before they were found alive and well. And what happened was that they'd actually worked together to look after each other and take care of each other and, you know, look out for each other's survival. Would I recommend this book? Absolutely, 100%. It's an interesting read. It's a good antidote to the things that are in the news at the moment. It is a hopeful history. It does give you some hope that people are better than were constantly portrayed. All of this is quite sort of global, big picture type thinking, but there is some info in there, especially at the end. There are 10 rules to live your life by that are much more about what you as an individual can do. And it's things like, think the best of people. You know, if you're in doubt, you know, assume the best of them. Think in win-win scenarios. What can you do that helps everybody? Avoid the news. He does suggest avoiding the news. He talks about the familiarity of getting to know a more diverse population. Like, racism is less of an issue when people understand other races. If they have limited contact with other races, that's when the fear and the racism, the hatred for other races, looking down on them, thinking of them as different to yourself, other, get to know the other, and you will value what they have to offer far more. And again, there's tons of research and examples that show that this is in fact true. So yeah, it's a really interesting read. I 100% recommend the book. If you want to have a little bit of faith in human nature restored, then this is a great place to go. So that's this week's book in 5 minutes. I'm Lindsay Milner, silverandtraining.com. Let me know what you think. Drop a note in the comments if you've read the book or if you think you might go out and have a read of it. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.